Well, friends, I told you just 24 hours ago that this was going to be a crazy 24 to 48 hours, and indeed it has been. And it is getting weirder by the hour. The Syrian government has indeed fallen, and Assad is who knows where. We're going to be talking about what's going on in Damascus right now. We're going to give you what's going on down in the south of Syria, where Israel has invaded. We're going to give you an update on the situation there in the Middle East, where Israel's kind of fitting into things. We're going to talk about who is now apparently in control of the Syrian government, what's the next steps, his relationship to the United States, and let's just say it's not good. He fought against U.S. soldiers in Iraq as part of Al-Qaeda. He was imprisoned for 5 years by U.S. soldiers in Iraq. We got a lot to talk about. What comes next? We're going to give you an update on Lebanon as well, because that is all part of this as well. So let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and we're covering the things on this channel that the mainstream media is, well, in this case, they're covering some of these things, but they're also not covering a bunch of these things. Not seeing anybody out there talking about how Israel has invaded Syria. Everyone seems to be focused on what's happening in Damascus. Meanwhile, we're seeing the Israeli Defense Forces have moved into southern Syria. They've moved in some places several kilometers. They've seized more high points in the Golan Heights, in Syrian-controlled Golan Heights, as the Syrian army withdrew to try to defend against the rebel forces. They left a bunch of this open, and Israel has just moved forward. They've captured some heavily fortified areas along the Golan Heights, including Mount Hermon, which is a pretty famous and prominent mountain in the area. They have captured the command bunkers there, some of which are actually UN bunkers. So that's a major escalation, and no word out of Syria how they're going to respond. I don't know that they can respond or that they will. Israel has been massing troops along that border for the last couple months. So they were in position. Israeli Air Force commandos, particularly launching their assault this morning on Mount Hermon and taking that command area. It is a very prominent structure, a number of fortifications on the mountain, so much so that in the war in 73, it was one of the few areas that was not taken by Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces were not able to successfully take it, or they chose not to, because it was an imposing location. And so that's big news out there. So, who is in control now? We're getting a lot of reports out there that government buildings have been taken over. There have been a few fires. One, like their passport control building was burned. Now, no word if that was an accident or retreating government forces decided to burn it, or quite possibly it was loyalist forces. When you start looking at the identification, that would be a repository of where they have lists of soldiers and people who have military passports and that kind of thing. So that may have been loyalist forces that burned the building in order to kind of cover up who was actually part of the government, who was working for special operations and that kind of thing. So that may not have been rebel forces coming in. That is not widespread. It was just several government buildings that caught fire, and probably nefarious, but could have been accidental. It could have been rebel forces, though, too. So they could have just been mad about it and torched the building. It only takes a couple people to start a fire like that, and when you have everyone staying at home scared, the fire department oftentimes doesn't show up. All right, so there was a major Israeli airstrike on a chemical weapons factory and supposedly chemical weapons munitions dump there to apparently keep those weapons out of the hands of the Al-Qaeda, ISIS folks coming down south. This whole rapid movement, clearly done in conjunction with Turkish intelligence and probably American intelligence, as well as Israeli Mossad. They're probably all very much involved in this, and like the Jordanian intelligence. This is really going to be. Well, the people of Syria are definitely on edge to see what happens next. We toppled Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and that was not the end of it. That was, in many ways, just the beginning. And while we've seen what has happened in Libya, where the country there has turned into a failed state, we may be seeing something very similar here in Syria, or it may move into a stable government. Only time will tell on this. One thing we do know is that HTS seems to be at the point, and they have their forces do seem to be controlling some of the key buildings. And Jolani, who is a wanted terrorist, there's a $10 million U.S. bounty on this guy's head. We want him turned over so that we can send him to Guantanamo in Cuba. But I don't know if that's going to be rescinded or what this is going to look like in the near future. Obviously, these guys are at least United States and NATO adjacent in philosophy. It looks like Syria has flipped from the Iran, Lebanon, Russia camp over into, well, we're going to see where it ends up. Is it going to move towards like where Saudi Arabia is, Jordan, Egypt, and like the Gulf states where they're kind of like a de facto U.S. ally? Or are they going to go more like the Taliban route? Because quite frankly, a lot of these guys that have rolled into town kind of make the Taliban look like moderates. Over the next week or so, we may see some pretty crazy stuff happen. Now, I don't know what intelligence agencies have their fingers in the pie and how much control they have over these guys. We're going to see how moderate they're going to be. Giuliani did a interview a few days ago with CNN, which is basically a mouthpiece for U.S. intelligence alphabet agencies. It has been long proven that if you go to the, or at least in the past, I don't know what it is now, but in the past, if you went to the website of CNN, you actually got an intelligence tracker put on your browser. And that has been admitted through some of the stuff that has been leaked out through Snowden and those guys. We know that for a fact that the U.S. intelligence agencies had weaponized the CNN website to put snooping and cookies on that would feed that information directly to U.S. intelligence agencies. So CNN magically got this interview before. I mean, most of us watching this from the outside did not expect the Syrian government to fold up like it did. This happened very, very quickly. I thought it would take a good bit more time, but they rolled through Syria sort of like the Taliban rolled through Afghanistan, after our president told us that there was no chance of the Afghan government collapsing. Well, just like the Afghan government collapsing, so the government in Syria did. So we're now seeing potentially why Israel wanted the ceasefire with Lebanon, so that it could shift its troops against the Syrian border, and so it could focus its efforts on Syria, collapsing Syria. There are a lot of Russian troops and Russian aircraft and stuff like that I don't know the status of. We do know that the airport has been captured. and other military bases across Syria have been captured. Whether any Russians were caught in the mix or whether the Russians were able to get out in time. We do know that Iran started to pull out their people, their high-ranking people, as well as their ground troops and such. How many of them have been trapped in Syria as well? Time will tell. A lot of questions are unanswered at this time. But Jolani, who has appeared in Damascus and is part of the folks that have been receiving the ceremonial passing of the torch of the government from the previous prime minister. Jolani is not a good guy from the America's perspective. Now, he traveled to Iraq to fight against Americans. He traveled to Iraq just before the U.S. invasion, and he then worked with Al-Qaeda, supposedly as a foot soldier. People accused him of being a higher-ranking person, and he has said that no, he was not a high-ranking person. He was in Abu Ghraib. I can't pronounce that place. And a number of other prison sites for the U.S. military. He was in prison for 5 years for fighting against U.S. soldiers and fought for a number of years there before he was released. So, or he escaped. I'm not sure what, but he does have a $10 million bounty by the U.S. government on his head for being part of Al-Qaeda. Now it's called HTS. That seems like it's another rebranding, basically so that it makes it more palatable, because HTS sounds less threatening and less loaded of a name than Al-Qaeda. So what the situation's going to be here now, it seems like the intelligence agencies there, as well as NATO, as well as Gulf states, they seem to be much more in the know here that this was going to happen. They were expecting this or prepared for this. We will see what exactly unfolds in the coming days. Let's get over to Lebanon. We have the 60-day ceasefire in Lebanon still holding, more or less. Basically, let's go through a few of those terms because it is illuminating. First off is that Israel did invade Lebanon, and that was not widely reported. It was reported by this channel about the invasion of Lebanon. I told you that it was coming, and then when it happened, and mainstream media didn't really talk much about it and just kind of talk about little incursions and little... No, they invaded, and they are holding about 5 to 6 kilometers deep into Lebanon. Now, as part of the terms of the treaty, the ceasefire, Israel is going to hold those 5 to 6 kilometers that it captured from Lebanon as a buffer area. The Lebanon army is supposed to take a buffer zone north of that and clear out all Hezbollah, which is supposed to be further north, and the Lebanese military, which is not directly related to Hezbollah. And the Lebanese army is supposed to control that buffer section above the buffer section that the Israeli Defense Force has control. They're not supposed to shoot at each other. They're not supposed to shoot rockets. Israel's not supposed to do airstrikes. They have been doing those things back and forth, but less than before. No word yet on how resilient this or how much the issue over in Syria is going to affect the ceasefire. But big news out there is that the pipeline for missiles and weapons and everything like that going from... do it the other way, right? Because it's mirror image here. Going from Iran, across Iraq, across Syria, into Lebanon. That's how they've been sending convoys of trucks with missiles and weapons and everything like that. That's how the missiles and all that stuff has been getting to the border, the northern border of Israel. That has been cut. They are not able to take trucks across Syria anymore because it is now controlled by rebel groups that are very much hostile to Hezbollah and hostile to Iran. These guys have been fighting against the Iranians, so that looks like it's going to be harder for Iran to resupply Lebanon and the Hezbollah forces in Lebanon. So what that's going to look like in the near future, they can't fly over, they can't take trucks over anymore. This is going to probably impact the Hezbollah forces in Lebanon. So that's big news out there. And for the rest of this stuff, we're going to have to see how it goes. But I did like this one quote here that in Damascus, the ruling party now appears to be Al-Qaeda in suits. All right, friends, we'll keep you updated on things as they roll out. Cautiously optimistic. I know a lot of people out there saying these guys are worse than Assad. And in some senses, yes. In some senses, no. We're going to see. And like I said, the big question that I have right now is how firmly are those hooks by the intelligence community embedded into these rebel groups? Are they going to be able to control these guys? Or are the monsters going to get off the leash? We're going to see that in the next coming days about retribution. We're going to see whether they start persecuting religious minorities. We're going to see shortly how they interact with the Kurdish groups, and that will be very telling, at least initially, how deep the intelligence community does have control over HTS and some of the other groups, other extremist groups. Hopefully they can control these guys and at least move this towards a stable government, or at least towards a partition. But I'm cautiously optimistic, but a lot of things could go very, very wrong in the coming days and coming weeks. All right, friends, hopefully you guys are moving towards a Merry Christmas for yourselves. Hopefully you're remembering those who are suffering and those who are like the disaster victims in North Carolina and Tennessee. We're going to get you some more updates on what's going on in those places, as well as people around the world. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up there. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report out.